Hello and welcome to another episode of the DVD Graveyard. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at Basket Case 3, The Progeny from 1991, directed once again by Frank Henenlotter. And of course this would be the third and final film in the Basket Case trilogy, which I think it actually caps off the trilogy pretty well. You know, there was never another film, or there was never, Frank Henenlotter did other films, of course, that were also just completely crazy. But I'm really surprised the Basket Case never really got a remake or another sequel or anything like that. You know, it just seems like one of those movies that would have kind of been given that treatment, which I'm okay that it doesn't have one, because I don't really think that you could really capture the magic of these films. I think they were definitely a product of their time. So, like I said, Basket Case 3, it came out 1 year after the second movie, which is absolutely wild, and this one is absolutely wild. It is nuts, and I look forward to getting into it. Now, it's not as crazy as the second one. I mean, I don't even really want to say that, because it still is pretty crazy, compared to the second one. It's just, I don't know. I'll preface this right here. I don't know if it's just going from like that initial watch from the first Basket Case film, which was played a lot more seriously and a lot more kind of, it was still definitely, you could call that a horror comedy, but it felt a little bit more serious. And then going into Basket Case 2, which just went completely off the rails and went fucking wild, and in the horror comedy direction with all these crazy effects and everything, it was so jarring going from, the first film to the second one. And I don't know if it's just because this one, like, it's kind of just as crazy as the second movie, in a way. Like, there's still a lot of just crazy shit going on, but I don't know if it's just because it didn't really have that initial like shock value that the second one had going from the first one. I don't know, I don't even know if that's really the way to describe it, really and truly. But that was just something I thought of when I watched it. Like, it was something I felt like I needed to mention, and I'll probably touch on that more, kind of as we get into, into the review, or get into the end of the review, I should say. But this one is still a fun time. Great effects going on in this movie. That's one thing I can give this. This probably has the best special effects out of the entire trilogy. Some of the sequences in this movie are just fantastic, and everything looks great. I think Gabe Bartalos was the one that was doing the effects for this movie. So anyway, before I get into the review, because I'm just rambling at this point, I am going to read the plot synopsis off the back of this Synapse Blu-ray, which, is the same people who released the Blu-ray for the second film. But this is a good Blu-ray. You only get one special feature. You get the theatrical trailer on this Blu-ray, but you can get it really cheap. Like this one and the second one, I think I picked them up for like $12. Like something like that, $12 a piece, like off Amazon. So, it really wasn't bad. So, if you're wanting to get these movies, I definitely think that this is probably the if you want to own them anyway, this is the way to get them. Like I said, they're pretty cheap. And like I said, these Blu-rays look pretty good, but they are all available on Tubi if you get the chance. So, anyway, he's back, he's bad, and he's a dad. Belial, everyone's favorite beast in a basket, is back in this sensational third film in the wildly macabre Basket Case horror series. After being separated again from his conjoined twin brother Dwayne, Belial finds out he's going to be a deformed daddy. Mrs. Belial delivers a litter of bouncing baby monsters, but the blessed event turns into a nightmarish ordeal when the police kidnap the little critters. They should know it's not safe to anger Belial. Attacking the cops in a climactic, gory rampage, everyone's favorite mutant Mauler stops at nothing to get his newborns back. So, that's a pretty much sums up kind of what's going on in this movie, because the plot is kind of weird in this movie, like just kind of how everything works out. It's sort of kind of all over, like, I don't really even want to say all over the place. There's just kind of a lot of like a lot of setup, most of the movie. Like, it's just, I don't know, it just feels weird, kind of compared to the first and the second movie. Like, it just seemed like the plot was kind of moving a little bit better in those first two films, versus this one. This one, we kind of have a lot of downtime, which is not really, again, a problem, because, a lot of the effects are good. We get a lot of the mutated people from the second film are back in this movie, and they look better than ever. Like I said, all the effects are just fantastic in this movie, but it's a lot of just kind of sort of waiting around kind of for the sort of climax, which kind of wraps up pretty quick. Like, it feels like it kind of rushes sort of towards the end. So, but anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm not going to get too deeply in on this one as I did the last two. I'm just going to kind of go over this one kind of briefly. Before I get too far, I'm going to talk about the cast. So, of course, Kevin Van Hentenryck comes back as Dwayne Bradley. Of course, Annie Ross comes back as Granny Ruth, which I absolutely love her in this movie. She was great in Basket Case 2 as well, but she's even better in this movie. One of my standout characters that I really love in this movie is Jim O'Doherty, who plays Little Hal. He just cracks me up. He's not in a huge role in this movie. Well, figuratively speaking, but he's one of my favorite characters in this movie, just for one scene in particular. Tina Louise Hilbert, who plays Opal, and then of course even Beverly Bonner kind of makes a little small cameo appearance in this movie. So I was happy to see her in this. So when we start out in this movie, basically it picks up, we get a little recap from the second film. We get a little recap of the ending of what's going on there. Of course, Belial and Eve are boning, and they're creating these baby Belials, just like in the second one. It's a crazy way to open the movie, and it's just like, holy shit. Especially if you haven't watched them in a while and you kind of forgot about that for whatever reason. It kind of takes you off guard. So they're upstairs doing it, and then of course, Dwayne freaks out and he sews Belial back to himself and everything else. And the events from the second movie, like I said, are just recapped. And Dwayne wakes up in a straitjacket, kind of in this room several months later. Granny Ruth has been basically keeping him hostage in this house. And he's kind of come to the decision that he needs to be reunited with Belial, which is kind of what happens at the end of each of these movies. Like, they get in a big fight and they separate, and they're already separated, but they separate like mentally. Like, he hates Belial for one reason or another, and he goes crazy, and then they decide that they need to be back together, in the next film. So that's kind of what's going on. He feels like he needs to be with him, and Granny Ruth tells him that Belial just does not want to speak to him right now, because of their last kind of confrontation that they had. And, while all this is going on, they're kind of planning a road trip because Eve, Belial's girlfriend, is pregnant with Belial's child. So they're going to go on this road trip to this doctor who can, birth this baby. So they get in this school bus and they travel to this small little town with all of the mutated people. There's a musical number in there. Like I said, everything just looks really good. Like, all the creatures, a lot of the same ones kind of come back from the previous film, but their makeup is just like even better this time around. They all look, even more disturbing and freaky looking, and just really, really cool. Like I said, the effects are fantastic in this movie. And basically they roll up at this doctor's house, who, he knows all of them, and he knows Granny Ruth, and they come in there to kind of talk to her, and they're all excited to see her. But the doctor is not exactly the one that they are there to see. They're actually there to see the doctor's, his adopted son, I believe, which actually turns out to be Granny Ruth's son, which is Little Hal. And he, again, played by Jim O'Doherty, I think is how you say that. He is he's something in this movie. So while they're there, they begin to they take Eve out of this school bus that they've traveled in, and this part always cracks me up because Eve, whenever they pick her up out of the bus, her water breaks, and it literally is just pouring water like a waterfall out of this bus. And Dwayne turns around, still in this like straitjacket that he's in, because Granny Ruth is basically kind of holding him prisoner at this point, so he doesn't escape. And the water is just flowing out, and then he says, what is that? And she says, "Oh, it's Eve's water." And I don't know why that makes me laugh so hard. Anyway, that always makes me, that's just so funny. Anyway, so they take her upstairs, and they kind of start the procedure, of delivering this Belial child. And so while they're doing this, Granny Ruth decides to set Dwayne free, because he's just kind of losing his mind and wanting to kind of escape so that him and his brother can get back together by whatever means necessary, but Belial won't talk to him, and so on and so forth. They start to birth this baby from Eve, and of course little Hal is sitting there videotaping it, and they pop out one baby, and then 2 and 3 and 4, and it just keeps going on and on and on, and little Hal's like, 7 sent straight from heaven, and just he's just hammering it up. I mean, he's cracking me the hell up. Like, this is probably my favorite scene in the movie, one of my favorite scenes, just because little Hal was just he's so funny. But at the same time, all of this that's going on is so disturbing, like, and freaky, but like, I don't know, but it's played like so just normal and casual, and it's just it's so odd. Like, everything in this movie that's going on, is just very, very peculiar, very, very strange. And as I said earlier, of course, at this point, Granny Ruth has set Dwayne free from this straitjacket. Well, he ends up escaping from this house, and he goes to find, he goes to the sheriff's station, and that is whenever he runs into Opal, which is a girl that he met earlier in the film, played by Tina Louise Hilbert, and he kind of explains kind of what's going on to her briefly, and she kind of tricks him more or less, and he ends up getting locked in this jail cell, and they find out that he is one of the Bradley brothers, and that he is a wanted fugitive, and basically there is $1 million reward for Dwayne and Belial. So these cops decide to go back to Hal's house where he's kind of told them that he came from, and they go there and they're breaking and they're going to kill Belial, and when they get there they end up killing Eve instead, and they take all these Belial babies, all 12 of them that she popped out, and they're actually they're disturbing looking. I didn't even mention the babies. They're kind of disturbing looking, but they're also really kind of cute, to be honest with you. They're just tiny little Belials, and they're precious, and they're just kind of all in this little kind of bassinet type thing, if that's what you call that, I'm not sure. And they end up taking them back to this jail, and where Dwayne is, and of course the sheriff comes in, and a couple other sheriff's deputies come over there to kind of see what's going on, and they're kind of more or less holding Dwayne hostage, and Opal kind of gets really weird and ends up like, she's wearing like this leather stuff underneath her blouse, and she gets like a bullwhip and is trying to like more or less rape Dwayne. It's a very, very odd situation. Again, the movie gets very weird, just kind of, and it goes off on these weird tangents. So while all of this is going on, they find out that Eve has been killed, of course, and Belial, kind of wants to take revenge. All of these movies end up kind of more or less being revenge films, to be honest with you, but this is kind of where it starts to pick up. And, at this point, we're like probably 40 minutes into the movie, give or take, whenever this really kind of starts to kind of pick up a little bit, and they go to the sheriff's station, and they kill all of these sheriff's deputies that are in there. Belial does, which, it kind of pays off, to be honest with you. Like I said, this one moves a little bit slower than some of the other films, but it pays off, because, I mean, my God, are the kills, the gore effects, everything in this movie looks so good. I mean, like the scene where Belial crushes the sheriff, the sheriff's deputy squishes his throat, and like his eyeballs pop out, and his mouth. It's so badass looking. Or like the other one, he ends up ripping his head off. He takes the one guy's head and twists it all the way around. All of the effects just look so damn good in this movie. Like, I cannot stress that enough. So during this whole process, Opal is killed, and the sheriff kind of comes back to find out what's going on. He ends up shooting Belial. He injures Belial, through his basket, and they're unable to free the baby Belials. So Dwayne ends up carrying Belial back to Little Hal, and that is when they begin to kind of construct this mech suit that he's going to use to free the babies. And so during this time, Granny Ruth kind of goes to the sheriff's station and tells the sheriff, or she kind of tries to bargain with him, and the sheriff kind of tells her that, bring him Belial, and, then we'll, I'll give you the children or whatever. So they end up having this kind of final face-off at like this warehouse in this Belial's in this weird like mech suit type thing that little Hal kind of built out of just junk and garbage and stuff. It's really cool. It kind of reminds me of like the power loaders from Aliens, kind of sort of, except like a junky version of that. But they kind of have this little final showdown, and Belial ends up, he's the suit kind of either it like runs out of power or something like that, and the baby Belials end up attacking the sheriff, and they kill the sheriff, and that kind of wraps that up until we get to sort of our final scene in the film, which is where they there is like this talk show called Ronaldo that they go on, and which I don't think was a real talk show. I think it was like a parody of Geraldo, if I'm not mistaken, from back in the day. So Granny Ruth is on this, and of course all these mutated people are there, and she basically kind of comes up to the camera on this television show, and she tells them, fight back, we're out there, this is our world now, and until next time, I hope everyone has a great night. And the movie just kind of ends right there, and that is Basket Case 3. So, like I said, this one was kind of, to me personally, it was kind of hard to talk about this one just because it's so like just kind of all over the place. As far as the plot goes, I don't feel like it's as streamlined as, of course, the first two. But having said that, I mean, it is still a really enjoyable entry in the series. Now, I personally think that it is probably, and don't hate me for this, but I personally think that this is probably like the weakest one in the trilogy for me personally, because I just don't think that you can top that second film. I think the second one is so much better. I think it is great. I think it's a fantastic movie. But I do still have fun watching this. This one is a good little follow-up to the second movie. Like I said, I think what really saves this is just how good the effects are in this movie. Like, the effects are just working, on firing off on all cylinders. Everything looks fantastic in this movie. The gore, the creature effects, the death effects, whatever you want to call that. Everything just looks great in this movie, and that's kind of what saves it for me, and that's what makes it enjoyable to watch. Because, again, like I said, the plot is a little bit kind of all over the place. Maybe and this is probably the one I've seen the least, to be honest with you, so maybe upon, like, future watches, maybe I might like this one a little bit more, and maybe it'll kind of grow on me, but in my personal opinion, at this moment, I think this is probably my least favorite of the trilogy. Again, don't hate me for that, but I do like the concept of these kind of baby Belials, but again, I just feel like the franchise was kind of running out of steam at this point a little bit, but anyway, again, like I said, fun movie, highly recommend it. If you get the chance, definitely check these movies out. I believe all three of them are streaming on Tubi, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely, if anything, definitely watch the first two. I mean, those two are incredible. They're some of, I think Basket Case is probably one of my favorite films of the 80s at this point. And then, of course, I'd probably put Basket Case 2 as one of my favorite films of the 90s, 100%, because they are just wild. They're crazy. If you get the chance, like I said, even check out some of Frank Henenlotter's other films. He's got some really good movies that are also pretty wild. Probably not as I don't know if I'd say as wild as this, but I don't know. They're pretty. They're pretty nuts, if I'm being honest with you. And also, I want to apologize that it took me a while to get this video out. I've had a lot of personal stuff going on. I know I haven't posted in like a week or so. I've actually been just trying to get time to sit down to watch this movie. I actually watched it last week, and I had planned to sit down and do the review, but of course something came up, and I was not able to actually do it. So I had to wait a few days, and then I had to watch it again, and then now I'm kind of doing the review. So I've kind of put this one off a little bit, so I'm sorry. I try to be more consistent with my uploads, but like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on with work, a lot of stuff going on in my personal life, but everything is kind of back situated, and I should know better whenever I do a series of films, because I can't just not do like all three of them, especially if it's a trilogy. Like if I can't just do the first two. I've got to wrap it up before I'm able to let myself move on to anything else. That's just how my OCD works. But anyway, that's just me. So anyway, I'll stop rambling now. I hope everyone enjoyed this review. I hope everyone gets the chance to check these movies out, and I hope everyone enjoys these movies. Like I said, they're a fun time, ridiculous, crazy little movies. If you get the chance and you're a physical media person, definitely pick up these Synapse Blu-rays of Basket Case 2 and 3, and then of course Arrow Video released the first Basket Case, which is an excellent release, loaded down with special features. Like I mean that one is absolutely loaded. This is a really fun trilogy that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, and I'm really glad I got the chance to kind of talk about it and go over my thoughts of these films. So anyway, as always, have a great rest of your night. Stay tuned for the next episode, and goodbye.